Archaeologists in the Dead Sea region believe they may have uncovered the remains of Lot's wife, and what they found left even the experts speechless.
Appearance and occurrence of microspherules, very, very tiny spherical shaped melted pieces of mineral grains.
That's Lot's wife.
So what we see here today is just a reminder of the story.
In the heart of the dry, rocky land around the Dead Sea, where pillars of salt stand tall and cold, like ghosts of the past, a biblical story still echoes. The story of Lot's wife who turned into a pillar of salt, a chilling warning for all time. The biblical account of Lot's wife turning into a pillar of salt is one of the most memorable and theologically rich moments in the book of Genesis. For centuries, this story has stood as a profound lesson on what God has called us to abandon. However, in the modern era, many people struggle to accept this narrative as historical fact. The description of a woman physically transforming into a pillar of salt is often viewed as scientifically impossible, leading some to dismiss the story as a myth or a fable and, by extension, question the overall reliability of the Bible. Yet, a compelling convergence of recent archaeological discoveries near the Dead Sea and enduring biblical lore is now forcing the world to look closer. This investigation is anchored by the region's eerie geological features. Towering, ghostly salt formations, some so uncannily shaped they resemble petrified human figures. These natural sculptures, observed by local Bedouins for generations and even noted by the ancient historian Josephus, now stand at the epicenter of a fascinating question. Could these pillars of salt be the terrifying, permanent monument to the disobedient woman, the final testament to the biblical account of Lot's wife? Stay with us as we delve deeper into these extraordinary discoveries and uncover what archaeologists have found. Something that might just change everything we thought we knew about this ancient story. Recently, a team of archaeologists stumbled upon something that has sent shockwaves through both the scientific and biblical worlds. The possible remains of Lot's wife, the woman who looked back. The discovery was made near Mount Sodom, a jagged ridge stretching along the southern edge of the Dead Sea. The area is riddled with salt caves and mineral pillars, many formed by natural erosion, but this one was different. Beneath layers of compacted ash and crystallized salt, the team uncovered what appeared to be a distinctly human form, partially embedded in a column of white mineral. Initial scans revealed a faint skeletal outline, not fossilized bone, but organic residue turned to salt. For the researchers, it was a startling geological anomaly. Could this be the very spot where divine judgment once struck? Not long after that, the silent earth near the Dead Sea was violently awakened by the trowels of archaeologists. What they unearthed is not mere history, but a searing testament that seems to confirm the most dreadful passages of the biblical narrative. They have stumbled upon a wealth of material, a ghostly echo from a time when the sky itself rained judgment. The most compelling, most chilling evidence lies in the discovery of ancient cities entombed beneath the salt flats and thick deposits of ash in the region. These are not quiet ruins. These findings scream of a catastrophic event, a destruction so absolute, so incandescent, it could only be the fiery wrath detailed in the Bible. Yes, right here, where the sun once shone upon the wicked streets of Sodom and Gomorrah. A sudden, overwhelming doom struck. The destruction was not a slow decay. It was a hellish inferno. The remains of the cities were found buried under thick layers of ash, their buildings and pottery scorched by a fire so unimaginably hot that the very clay and stone were fused into a glass-like material. Imagine the heat required to turn a city into brittle crystal. This evidence is a mirror image of the biblical account of brimstone and fire descending from the heavens. The evidence, it seems, is only beginning to speak, and we have merely brushed the surface of a revelation buried for millennia. What the archaeologists uncovered may not just be a geological marvel, but the echo of divine fire that once reshaped this land. For as we trace the ancient scars around the Dead Sea, this strange, lifeless basin shimmering beneath a merciless sun, we find more than salt and stone. We find memory. What role does Dead Sea play in this story? The Dead Sea is no ordinary sea. It is Earth's own witness to catastrophe, a body of water so dense with salt that nothing can live within it, a symbol of judgment and preservation intertwined. Here, the very soil exhales sulfur, the mountains glisten with white crystals, and the wind carries the scent of minerals as if the land itself still remembers the day fire fell from heaven. Scientists who study this region describe a place where nature behaves almost unnaturally. Beneath the surface lie thick veins of halite and gypsum, minerals capable of crystallizing in seconds under extreme heat. The same elements that define this unique landscape may have played a terrifying role in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, and perhaps that is why the entire Dead Sea Basin feels haunted, a vast, shimmering tomb sealed by time itself. Every grain of salt, every fracture in the rock seems to whisper the same story. Something beyond human comprehension once happened here. Geologists say this area is one of the lowest points on Earth, over 400 meters below sea level. A scar pressed deep into the planet's crust. To the faithful, that depth feels almost symbolic, as if the land itself bowed beneath the weight of divine anger. Even now, travelers who approach the southern rim near Mount Sodom speak of an uneasy stillness that hangs in the air, a silence that presses on the heart, as though the earth remembers, did Sodom and Gomorrah really exist? Excavations in the region of Tal el-Hammam, believed by many scholars to be the site of ancient Sodom, have revealed a destruction so sudden, so intense, that no human weapon could have caused it. Layers upon layers of burned bricks, vaporized pottery, and melted stones tell a story of catastrophic heat, a blast hotter than 2,000 degrees Celsius. Scientists now suggest it was a cosmic airburst, like the one over Tunguska, Siberia, only far more devastating. Entire cities were instantly incinerated. Human remains were found twisted in positions of terror. Flesh and bone turned to ash in seconds. Grain silos still contain charred seeds, a haunting reminder of a meal never eaten. When researchers analyzed the soil, they found something extraordinary. Tiny spherical particles of glass and iron, fused at impossible temperatures. These melted grains are identical to those found at sites of meteor explosions. But this wasn't just random catastrophe. The devastation aligns with the biblical description almost line by line. Fire from the heavens, total annihilation, and a barren wasteland left behind. Even the Dead Sea itself bears witness. High salinity levels, unusual mineral deposits, and the absence of life in certain sections all echo the biblical land that burns with sulfur and salt. Satellite imagery shows a massive scar of scorched terrain, stretching exactly where ancient trade routes once connected the cities of the plain. It is as if the earth itself remembers the wrath of that day. And yet, within this desolation, signs of divine precision remain. Lot's family escaped. One looked back. One moment of hesitation between obedience and longing turned into eternal stillness. As archaeologists examined the crystallized terrain near Mount Sodom, they began to notice something else, a peculiar formation shaped like a human figure, standing solemnly against the red cliffs. Locals have long called it Lot's wife. But what if it's not just folklore? The story of Lot's wife doesn't just live in the pages of the Bible. It's etched into the very landscape surrounding the Dead Sea. As archaeologists continue to explore the region, one particular site stands out: Mount Sodom. Mount Sodom rises like a ghost above the lifeless waters of the Dead Sea, a vast ridge of salt and stone stretching nearly 8 kilometers long, formed not by gentle erosion but by cataclysmic upheaval. Beneath its surface lie layers of ancient ash and mineral veins, so white they gleam under the desert sun like frozen lightning. Mount Sodom is unique, not only for its sheer size, but for the fact that much of the mountain is made entirely of rock salt. And nestled within this immense salt deposit is a formation that has captivated many, a towering pillar of salt. For centuries, locals and pilgrims have pointed to this structure and claimed that it bears a striking resemblance to a human figure. From a distance, it looks unmistakably human. The curved silhouette of a woman, frozen mid-turn, head slightly tilted, as though her eyes still reach back toward what was once home. The desert winds have sculpted her form, but something about it resists time too deliberate, too symbolic. Geologists describe it simply as a salt formation, created by the same evaporative forces that shape the Dead Sea. But for many, this explanation only deepens the mystery. How, among thousands of anonymous formations, does one stand precisely along the route fleeing Sodom? Why does this singular figure resemble a woman turning forever caught between obedience and regret? Biblical scholars point to Genesis 19:26. But Lot's wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. That one glance, a heartbeat of longing, turned into a monument of warning. Her heart remained where the fire had fallen. Archaeologists studying Mount Sodom have discovered that the mountain itself is composed almost entirely of pure rock salt, with pockets of trapped sulfur crystals, the very element mentioned in the biblical account of divine judgment. Even the air carries faint traces of burning minerals. Scientists can measure these details, but they cannot explain the precision, how the terrain, the chemical composition, and the biblical narrative align so perfectly. To the eye of faith, Mount Sodom is not merely geology, it is a memorial of disobedience. To the eye of prophecy, it is a mirror of the human soul, still tempted to look back at the world that is passing away. Standing before that silent figure, one cannot help but feel a strange ache, a collision between awe and sorrow. She was almost saved. She had stepped beyond the city's flames, crossed the threshold of mercy, but her gaze returned. And that gaze cost her eternity. Even now, pilgrims who visit Mount Sodom speak of an uncanny stillness near the pillar, as though the desert itself remembers. Some have reported faint tremors beneath their feet, a deep vibration, like the earth sighing. Others claim to hear whispers, when the wind rushes through the canyons, a sound like weeping, mixed with prayer. Because that's the lesson buried beneath the salt, not only for a woman, but for an age. A time will come when judgment will again sweep across the earth, and those who hesitate between salvation and the world will find themselves caught in its wake. So, as we stand before the shadow of Sodom, the ashes, the salt, the silence, one question lingers. If God turned a valley into glass to warn humanity once, how many warnings has He given us now? And all DEDs. And then process, as we stand before this newfound evidence, the very ashes of Sodom, a seismic shift must occur in our understanding of the Bible, and, more critically, in the bedrock of our faith. While the salt pillar at Mount Sodom stands as an undeniable physical relic, the tale of Lot's wife is a spiritual weapon, a profound generational warning about faith, obedience, and the deadly peril of looking back. The command, issued from the lips of angels in Genesis 19, was simple yet absolute. Do not look back. Lot and his kin were offered a miraculous last-second escape from the fiery maw consuming Sodom and Gomorrah, but they were forbidden to cast a single, longing glance at the wicked life they were abandoning. For Lot's wife, the temptation proved fatal. That momentary glance, that backward gaze, was not a slip of the neck. It was a betrayal of the soul. She was judged in her hesitation. Her act of disobedience was a symptom of a deeper internal rot, a yearning for the poisoned comforts of the past, a desperate clinging to the very sin and corruption God was calling her to flee. Her irreversible transformation into a pillar of salt is the ultimate metaphor for the human heart's tendency to cling to the old life, to the very things God commands us to cast off to move forward in faith. The gravity of her fate was so immense that Jesus' Christ himself resurrected her story as a dire warning to his followers. In Luke 17:32, he thunders with stunning simplicity. Remember Lot's wife. Why this stark two-word command? Because her story is not ancient history, it is a living lesson. Jesus reminds us that when God commands movement, we must commit to his guidance wholly. To look back, whether at our past sins, our old comforts, or outdated mindsets, is a spiritual anchor that will stop our progress and risk our salvation. The truth is, we are all haunted by her struggle. We desperately cling to old habits, toxic relationships, or destructive ways of thinking that cripple our journey into God's plan. The story of the salt pillar forces a harrowing self-examination. Are we so hopelessly attached to our past that we are letting it dictate our destruction? God's call is always forward, never backward. He asks us to relinquish the things of this world, not out of malice, but because he knows that holding on to the past, the sin, the distractions, will prevent us from experiencing the fullness of the life he has prepared. Just as Lot's wife's moment of hesitation sealed her irreversible fate, our unwillingness to let go can stunt our spiritual growth and cost us everything. The salt pillar stands today as a terrifying living monument to this truth. It is a symbol not just of disobedience, but a stark illustration of God's uncompromising, righteous justice against the wickedness of a corrupted world. But the story does not end in tragedy. While judgment reigned upon the defiant cities, God extended mercy to Lot and his family, dispatching angels to rescue them. This act of grace was offered to those willing to listen and obey. We too are offered a way out. The story of Lot's wife is not merely a history lesson, it is a call to action. We are invited to reflect. Are we still looking backward in a way that hinders our walk with the Almighty? Are we ready to trust him fully? We must choose to move boldly into the future he has prepared, for his plan is far greater than anything we leave behind. The pillar of salt is an eternal, silent sentinel, reminding us that though judgment is certain for the defiant, grace is absolute for those who finally choose to let go and walk forward in unwavering faith. The night het blek to a dus en the stes and what he see in the stin of the prize, and the nine and he see. The transformation of Lot's wife is far more than a geological curiosity. It is a powerful, resounding spiritual lesson echoing across millennia. Throughout Scripture, salt signifies preservation, purity, and enduring covenant. It was essential to ancient offerings, representing the eternal nature of God's promises. Through this lens, the pillar is a stark, immutable reminder of the fatal consequence of clinging to a sinful past that God explicitly commanded Lot's family to abandon. Her backward glance was no mere act of curiosity. It was a defiant symbol of her deep attachment to a world steeped in sin, pride, and rebellion. By looking back, she betrayed a fatal lack of trust in God's deliverance and a crippling hesitation to embrace the future he had promised. This singular moment of doubt sealed her tragic fate, forever etching her into history as a perpetual warning. The salt pillar against the Dead Sea sky stands as an eternal monument to disobedience, reminding us that when God calls us to advance, we cannot afford to hesitate or look behind us. Lot's wife became a living symbol of judgment, a cautionary tale for all who prioritize the past over trusting God's direction. In Luke 17:32, Jesus himself pointedly commands, "Remember Lot's wife." This simple, profound statement is a direct call to action for every believer. Do not look back at the sinful desires, the crippling distractions, or the fading comforts of the world that once held us captive. It is an urgent reminder to fix our eyes wholly on the promises of God and the radiant future he has prepared, refusing to be tethered to the past. As we stand before this newfound evidence, the very ashes of Sodom, something far deeper than science begins to stir within us. Perhaps what's being uncovered is not just the ruin of a city, but the reflection of our own spiritual condition. The story of Lot's wife has always carried a weight beyond its ancient words. It is both warning and mercy, judgment and grace intertwined. Her transformation into a pillar of salt is not simply the end of a disobedient life. It is a mirror held up to every heart that hesitates when God calls it forward. When the angels spoke, their command was clear and simple. Do not look back. It was not cruelty. It was protection. A divine urging to let go of what was already lost. Yet in that single glance, Lot's wife revealed what so many of us quietly struggle with. The longing for what once was, even when God is calling us into something new.